Today we are discussing insights from one of the studies in the Equity Research Programme, which has been running since 2018 in the University of Manchester. I'm Sue, and I'm a member of the Equity Lived Experience panel.
Hello, I'm Anne, and I'm also a member of the advisory panel, and we're here today to share some of the findings of the process evaluation in the equity trial. To explain what this is, we're going to be speaking to a researcher on the project, Kelly. So, Kelly, please can you tell me what the process evaluation is?
Hi. Yeah, of course. Well, first off, for a little bit of background, the Equity Project has been a large research project running in the NHS talking therapy services around England, and its aim has been to enhance the quality of treatment delivered over the phone to people who are experiencing difficulties with their mental health. In the earlier stages of the programme, we explored people's experiences of receiving treatment over the phone and practitioners' experiences of delivering treatments. And we developed a package for services which included training for practitioners and materials for patients to hopefully improve things. Over the last couple of years, we've been running a randomised controlled trial where half of the services in the trial have received the package, which we call the intervention, and half have continued as usual, with the aim to look at if the intervention has had any impact. So we do that by looking at big data sets, but numbers only tell us if something has happened and not what. So to explore that in more depth, we've undertaken what we call a process evaluation, which has involved us interviewing practitioners and patients from services which have been involved to see what their experience has been. And today we're going to talk about some of the things that we have found from interviews with patients.
Okay, so patients have been interviewed to see what their experience has been receiving treatment over the phone in the services which they have received the equity intervention. You mentioned that you did this in the beginning of the programme when you were first developing the intervention. So have you noticed differences from then to now?
Yes, there are differences from our original study in 2018, but we have to acknowledge that a big thing has happened during that time, which has undoubtedly had a big influence on everything to do with this research, and that's COVID. So when the pandemic started in 2020, absolutely everything was impacted by COVID, including the delivery of healthcare. And when we first did interviews in 2018, the idea of receiving treatment remotely was seen by a lot of people as something that wasn't as good as in person. And a lot of people felt like they were receiving a lesser treatment and something that was being offered by the NHS basically to save money and was being delivered by people that were less qualified. And that sort of belief had quite a big impact on people's overall experience of treatment. However, when COVID started, literally everything in the world went remote almost overnight. Doing things sort of became the norm. All talking therapies delivered by the NHS went remote, either on the phone or online, and people just got used to doing things like that. And slowly over time, some things have moved back to being in person, but generally the world's changed. And I think we can all agree that nowadays we do a lot of things remotely, like recording this right now, that before COVID we would have just done in person without even considering an alternative. And that's important because we have to keep that in mind when we look at the findings of this study, because we can't say definitively what the cause of these changes is, whether it's the equity intervention, the impact of COVID, or both.
Okay, that makes sense. So then, can you tell us what were some of the main things that you noticed in these interviews? What stood out as important key things that people were saying?
Sure. One of the most noticeable things has been the quality of the therapeutic relationship between patient and practitioner. So historically, people have reported finding it more difficult to build rapport over the phone, and that developing a good therapeutic relationship remotely with a practitioner can be hard. We found that people have reported feeling more heard and valued by their therapists, as one of the things that stood out was the level of active listening patients reported from their therapists. So some of them said they felt like therapists were really engaged with them and like they felt like they were truly present during sessions.
Do you think that's linked to the training or research resources provided by the equity intervention?
Yes, possibly, because active listening is a crucial part of any therapeutic relationship, and it's something that the equity intervention specifically emphasised. Therapists were trained to focus more on listening to patients, not just in terms of their words, but also their emotions and their underlying concerns. Patients felt the therapists were genuinely engaged and attentive, which could have contributed to the better relationship that people have reported.
That's interesting. Was there anything else in terms of how practitioners communicated with patients that was highlighted?
Yeah, there was. We also noticed that tone of voice seemed to play an important role in patients feeling safe and connected. There was a sense of the importance of therapists having a calm and understanding tone during sessions, particularly in the absence of body language. And again, this is something we didn't find in the earlier interview study. At that time, people often felt disconnected during telephone sessions, and there was more reporting of awkwardness, of like when to talk and awkward silences and that sort of thing, which wasn't really present in these recent interviews.
Okay, so it sounds like on the whole, people have become more accustomed to communicating remotely. Practitioners have been able to communicate more skillfully with patients over the phone, and that has impacted on patients' feelings about their interactions with the therapist.
Was there anything else significant that stood out in the interviews?
Yeah. Another thing we noticed was that there seemed to be much more of a general sense of patients feeling more responsible for their treatment. And I mean that in terms of taking more initiative, doing the homework and engaging more actively. Like the idea of you need to put in the effort to reap the reward sort of thing.
How do you think the equity intervention might have contributed to this?
Well, the intervention was designed to empower patients, and one of the main strategies was to give people more control over their treatment. And by providing clear resources, setting expectations, and involving patients in the decision-making process, they felt more like active participants in their journey, if you like. The goal was to make them feel more responsible for their progress. And it seems that patients who were interviewed felt more motivated to engage and take responsibility for completing tasks and staying on track with their treatment.
That sounds really positive. But were there any areas that were identified that still need improvement?
We did get suggestions for improvements, which were really interesting. So, for example, a few participants mentioned they'd like a follow-up check-in in a couple of months after treatment, sort of for ongoing support, for accountability, for keeping up with strategies, and to help sustain the progress that they'd made during the treatment. And it could certainly be something to explore moving forward, especially as we know that mental health support shouldn't just stop at the end of a treatment session. Integrating follow-up check-ins could maybe enhance long-term recovery outcomes. And another thing interviews highlighted was that there still seems to be quite a gap in patient knowledge around the available help there is. So people are still unsure about where they can go for further help and support once the treatment has ended. And I think part of this is a general issue with mental health services. There's a clear lack of communication about available resources. And perhaps we could do more to ensure that patients are aware of the support they can access at all stages of their treatment.
How about the outcome measures people complete in sessions? I think I remember something about those from the early research where people were completing questionnaires in each session, but often didn't know what the point of them was or what they indicated. And it sometimes meant people felt like it was quite generic and not personalised for them. Did you explore those in these interviews?
Yeah, we did. And what we found is that transparency around progress and outcomes can be really motivating for people. When patients have access to their own progress scores or outcome measure scores, it can give them tangible evidence of their efforts and achievements, which can foster a sense of ownership over treatment and increase engagement. It's definitely something worth considering for the future.
So what happens now with equity? What does all this mean?
Well, we're now in the final stages of the programme, gathering up the final data and waiting to see what the outcome of the equity trial might be. As I said earlier, there's been a lot of things happen during the course of this programme, which have had a big impact on what the conclusions might be that we'll be able to draw. But the process evaluation has highlighted what's important going forward in NHS talking therapies in terms of delivering quality treatment. We know people need to feel heard, valued, and be at the centre of their own care in order for them to be motivated and engaged with their treatment. Ensuring information about what help is available for people is easy to access and understandable will help NHS talking therapies continue to be a valuable resource for people in the future.
Well, I think that's been a really good overview of the study, and hopefully it's been interesting to listen to.
Yeah, I agree. Great to hear some of the findings towards the end of such a long research program. Looking forward to hearing about trial results when they're available.
They'll be available toward the middle of 2025, hopefully. Thanks, Anne and Sue, for asking the questions today, and thank you all for listening. Goodbye.
Bye, Kelly, and thank you.
Bye.